The gentleman yields back. Mr. Thanedar is recognized for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll get it.
And I want to thank all the witnesses to be here and for your testimony. I have a question for Dr. Miller Idris, if I may. As we have heard here today, the disinformation that spreads online can have dangerous real-world consequences. Disinformation has been used to incite violence, including the January 6th insurrection, and crime targeted at ethnic minorities. This disinformation drown out marginalized voices. Dr. Miller Idris, based on your research and expertise, what have you found are the best strategies for combating pervasive disinformation campaigns?
Thank you for the question. What we find in the evidence is that the best way to work to combat disinformation, if you will, is to prevent people from making the choices that would lead to the spread of that to begin with. So we focus on teaching people about manipulative tactics, regardless of the content, and also about recognizing sort of warning signs in their loved ones, regardless of the ideology. So for example, one of the things we hear from our focus groups is that young people have been saying in classrooms things like, there is no political solution, right? That comes from the left, that comes from the right. And it is a call to violence to say there's no more political solution, we have to move to violence. And so if an adult hears that, they know that a child is exposed to something online that is potentially opening up rabbit holes of further harm and disinformation. So that's what we work on.
Thank you. Now, despite my Republican colleagues' misplaced fixation on the defunct Disinformation Governance Board and their own disinformation on the board's intended role, the Department of Homeland Security has a significant and valid role to play in combating the dangerous disinformation that compromises our security. There are plenty of examples of disinformation occurring that has a Homeland Security nexus, including that tied to domestic terrorism, election security, migration, and disaster responses. Now, to what extent should DHS and other governmental agencies be identifying and addressing harmful content that may threaten Homeland Security?
Thank you for the question. I think that what we hear, anyway, in our lab is that American communities are desperate. They are worried. They're worried about what they're seeing, what their loved ones are seeing, and they're afraid. And so I think that the government has an obligation to help local communities with better ways to recognize and reject harmful content. And I think that that includes a national security frame, but not exclusively a national security frame. That has to also be something that is education, that is health and human services, that is about what local communities need. And that needs to include some expertise in where to draw the line. And I would welcome the opportunity to have longer conversations about where that line falls, because I think that's one of the biggest issues we face.
Well, I thank you, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.